Leadership Reimagined, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. I'm Janice Ellig, the CEO and founder of Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search through our long-standing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. On today's episode, Johnson & Johnson, a one-dose vaccine victory. I'm delighted to welcome Alex Gorsky, Chairman and CEO of Johnson & Johnson. We have much to cover, but first some background. Since J&J became a publicly traded company in 1944, Alex is the seventh to serve as its chair and CEO and the ninth leader since its founding 140 years ago. During his tenure, J&J has become the industry's #1 investor in research and development, delivering solutions to the world's most urgent, unmet healthcare needs. A leader among leaders, Alex is a member of the Business Council, the Business Roundtable, and a longtime advocate of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a supporter of veterans issues. Currently, he serves on the board of directors of IBM and the Travis Manion Foundation. I'm truly honored to welcome Alex Gorsky, Chairman and CEO of J&J, for his schedule could not be busier than it is these days. Alex, thank you for joining us today because you have so many demands on your time, but you're here to speak to us about some exciting news that is happening at J&J.
Well, Janice, thank you very much for having me today.
I'd like to start with that exciting news that was recently announced, authorizing J&J's single-dose vaccine.
Well, Janice, look, I could not be more proud of the news that we received just last week, where both the Food and Drug Administration as well as the CDC both recommended approval for our single-dose vaccine for use in adults 18 years and older for COVID-19. And while it certainly was a busy week, it's actually been an incredibly exciting 13 months to think that our scientists took some of the genetic coding information that was found very early on in the pandemic, and within a matter of months did what was normally require years to do in discovering, developing, ramping up the manufacturing for a vaccine that's safe and effective, available in a single dose, does not require extraordinary logistical issues, and that we're offering it on a not-for-profit basis for patients around the world.
And so how come this happened so quickly? Or had you been working on vaccines that then this was just an extension of that, Alex?
Well, that's a good question, Janice, because actually this is the result of literally decades of investment in research and development. And in particular, in the area of vaccines, we've been working for more than 10 years on our platform. As you know, scientific projects like this, they are never a linear shot. They always involve twists and turns and ups and downs along the way. And in our case, we had invested in a vaccine company more than 10 years ago. Some of the original work did not turn out as we had planned. But through that process, our scientists and physicians learned a lot. And it was about 4 years ago that we applied some of this technology against Ebola in Africa. And then we began testing it in areas such as HIV. And that gave us a tremendous amount of insight. In fact, we had over 100,000 patients of experience. And then when COVID-19 hit very early in 2020, that's when we quickly assimilated the information and put it to work on a vaccine specifically targeting, this particular virus. And the platform has demonstrated very strong safety. As I mentioned, it's been used in young and old patients across with a wide range of morbidities and mortality. The early data in the phase 1A and 2, as well as our phase 3 data, demonstrated very strong efficacy, 85% in severe disease, 100% of the time thus far, in patients keeping them out of the hospital and from dying. And that was also against some of the more virulent strains. So we're excited. We think it's going to offer a tremendous breakthrough as we continue to tackle the virus around the world.
So what do you think the numbers will be for you in terms of delivering that vaccine, the shot in the arm, basically, over the next 3-4 months or so?
As you can imagine, in addition to discovering and developing the vaccine, the other big challenge was how do you manufacture at this kind of scale? I don't think ever in history have people manufactured so many doses in such a short period of time. But through not only the internal capabilities that we have at Johnson & Johnson, but through a unique series of partnerships involving more than 10 different partners on a global basis, We quickly built up drug substance manufacturing, fill and finish capacity. And we're very proud of the fact that literally within a matter of just a couple of days of approval here in the United States, we've delivered almost 4 million doses. We expect to deliver a total of 20 million by the end of March, up to 100 million in the first 6 months of this year, on our route to almost 1 billion doses in 2021. And again, what's really important to remember is when I use those numbers, whether it's 4 million, 20 million, 100 or 1 billion, it's important to know is that means the same number of patients will have been successfully vaccinated because, again, only one shot's required.
Congratulations. That's such good news for the world with you, Pfizer and Moderna. But here, the one dose victory, it's phenomenal. So let's go back, though, Alex, all this success and your tenure at J&J. But let's go back to your roots. You graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, and after 6 years in the Army, had the rank of captain. How are these experiences really important to you in shaping your life and your career?
Well, Janice, I think in my mind, there's no way I'd be where I am today were it not for my time at West Point, the United States Military Academy, or my time serving my country in an active duty manner in the Army. They were just such formidable experiences. It's where I learned about leadership, for example, and how to work together as a team, how to overcome significant challenges. You don't have all the resources that you would like, and you're getting inundated with, a rapidly evolving situation. I learned a lot about diversity, working with people from different backgrounds who didn't look and talk and walk or sound like me. But ultimately, we needed to come together, get aligned behind a mission, find a way to complement each other, support each other, get work so that we got the very best from each other. Ultimately so that, we could get the job done. I've learned that it takes a lot of grit and that, frequently in whether it was in battle, but in life and work and in so many aspects of our life, we'll make mistakes, that we'll fall down and that we have to pick ourselves back up, dust ourselves off, find a way to not only keep ourselves moving forward, but to keep our teammates moving forward, to bridge that fine line between facing into reality, but also to create a sense of optimism and hope for the future where people see light at the end of the tunnel. I try to use all those different skill sets each and every day. Being exposed to those at a very early point in my career was seminal in making me the leader that I am today.
And then after that, you started in sales, a sales representative as a subsidiary of J&J. 33 years later, you remain in pharma. You didn't deviate. You kept on that path and you aspired to be CEO and chair. What kept you in the pharma area and how did you make it to the top? I think others would like to know, starting in sales, how they could get to be the CEO of a company.
Well, Janice, I wish I could say it was all due to a grand strategy or design or career planning. But again, as with many people, I think it had to do with hopes and dreams. It had to do with a lot of hard work and learning and mentoring along the way. I was incredibly fortunate to join a company that really believes in development. And I'm very proud of the fact that I started at the very entry level as a sales representative. I learned so much about customers, about working with accounts, with hospitals, with physicians, with other decision makers that were using our products every day, and to see what kind of service and support and help they needed in making decisions and ultimately to helping patients or consumers that they were serving. I was fortunate to join a company that, recognized and placed a premium on leadership early on. And I had a chance to move into sales management where I had the opportunity to manage a number of different people, later moved into marketing, and from there into various general management positions where I think I really learned about the diversity of the business, whether it was finance, working with research and development, working with our supply chain, working with our global colleagues on different, product or portfolio opportunities, getting exposed to the acquisition process. And all those were really important steps along the way. I always encourage everyone to not only look for promotional opportunities, but look for development opportunities where you get exposed to areas of the business or the organization that you would not ordinarily, have an opportunity to learn And it's when you build up those different capabilities and skill sets that you truly develop a foundation to not only be successful in whatever job you're in, but also to take on additional responsibility in the future. I did have the opportunity at one point to lead Johnson & Johnson for a short period of time. That in and of itself was developmental for me, going to a new organization and having to learn not only a new business, but to learn how a different company operates. It was also really insightful. It opened my eyes up to doing things perhaps in a different way. But I always knew deep down that Johnson & Johnson was even more than a company. It was almost like a family for me. When I had the opportunity to rejoin in a different sector, I knew that it was the right decision. And I was incredibly fortunate then to, be able to move through several different positions to where I am today as CEO and chair.
With you at the helm, I'm sure you have many different initiatives underway and would like to hear about those. One particular is the Race to Health Equity, which is meant to address health inequities of people of color. Fantastic initiative. But what will success look like in this regard in the future? And when do you see that you will have some measurable results?
Well, Janice, look, I think all of us have learned many, many lessons from COVID-19. The past year plus has been like actually none other in our lives, whether it's being quarantined in due to the virus and dealing with perhaps even friends or family members who are directly affected. It's about changing the way that we work together. And unfortunately, it also brought to a head many events, particularly last summer, concerning racism and social injustice in our country. The major lesson for many of us as companies is the important role that the industry in America plays in having to come up with, frankly, better solutions and ways of working together to help us overcome so many of these issues. And the other thing that I think we've learned is that if we aren't ensuring that our healthcare systems are robust and truly accommodate access, particularly throughout communities of color, whether it's Black, African American, Hispanic, that these societal inequities translate into inequities in terms of healthcare. And we need to do a better job than that. As we watched some of these events unfold at Johnson & Johnson, we knew that this was a really important time, not only for us to step up, but frankly, for companies across our country to step up. And we felt the best place to start would be in the area of healthcare. We made our first commitment that said, look, before we take on any other external initiatives, let's make sure our house is in the very best order it can be. And working across our enterprise with our leaders, following a series of really deep and moving discussions around issues of racism, around bias, around inclusiveness. We gathered a lot of feedback and really made what we feel are some bold commitments about what we're going to be doing internally. And while we're very proud of much of the progress that we made over the last several decades, we realized we need to do even more when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to training and development and retention, promotion. We put very explicit goals and objectives in place. And again, this was not just a United States effort. This was a global effort. We're sharing those goals so that we all as leaders, internally and externally, hold ourselves accountable and responsible to see even more progress over the next several years. Number two, we realized that since we're the largest healthcare company in the world, that we needed to do what we could to expand access to improve care in many of these underserved communities. So utilizing our broad network, for example, with nursing organizations, with physician organizations, with medical schools, how could we increase the number of diverse candidates in all of these programs? Because we know that the more diverse healthcare providers that we can support, the likely better access, the better reach and engagement they're going to have in these communities. How can we help contribute to some of the infrastructure in these communities through local community health clinics and additional outreach? Let alone even for COVID-19, could we get directly involved vis-a-vis bus tours into these communities for testing and ultimately for vaccination programs? And then last but not least, how could we use our big for good? If you just think about Johnson & Johnson, all the networks, the societies, the other external organizations, our supplier base, where we invest billions of dollars every year across thousands of suppliers around the globe. How can we share some of our philosophies, some of our processes and systems, and how we hold ourselves accountable with these partners so that hopefully they too could take up similar goals and objectives that would really multiply our efforts. So those are some of the things that we're doing. And I can tell you it's been a real source of inspiration and motivation for our employees. We look forward to being just as committed to these as we are our business goals or bringing new products to the market for the long run.
Alex, this is so inclusive. And so because today is March 8th, 2021, International Women's Day. So on that same topic, J&J is doing a lot in terms of outreach to gender diversity, equity, inclusion. What are some of the opportunities, particularly in STEM at J&J for women?
J&J, we've got a long track record of having women play just an integral and vital role in everything that we do at Johnson & Johnson. Janice, it goes back to the very beginning. Johnson & Johnson was founded in the 1880s and as early as World War I, when, of course, many men at that time in our country were deployed to Europe for the war. The women ended up running many of the factories, the plants, took leadership roles throughout the Johnson & Johnson organization, bringing things like first aid kits and other really important, healthcare products and services, to support those in need. And since then, if you look at how women have helped to shape both the science, the commercial aspects, our global footprint of Johnson & Johnson, it's been significant. Women now make up about 50% of our employees, almost 40% of our managerial ranks, and a very significant proportion of the VP all the way to our board level. And we understand that just doesn't happen on its own. It requires investment and commitment in terms of your recruiting and your training and your development efforts. For us, particularly in areas of STEM, unfortunately, there's still an underrepresentation of women in science and technology in other areas. We made it a point to double down, whether it's in our research and development areas, our manufacturing, our information technology group, because we think that, again, these are all places where we can certainly benefit by providing additional opportunities for women. Again, we've got a very comprehensive set of programs ranging from employee resource groups to internal STEM-oriented programs, educational, as well as direct training and development to make this happen. So I'm very proud of the progress that we've made. There's still more that needs to be done. But even today, if you look at Johnson & Johnson, our supply chain, our global supply chain, arguably one of the most complex, diverse supply chains in the world, involving over 350,000 line items, everything from biopharmaceuticals, vaccines, cell-based therapies, medical devices, whether it's orthopedics or cardiovascular or vision care, or even our broad array of consumer products like Tylenol and Neutrogena and Aveeno. This area is managed by Kathy Wengel, a woman who's been with Johnson & Johnson for more than 30 years. And again, represents an incredible achievement and position of responsibility for a woman directly in the heart of STEM. Yes, and Kathy is going to be on a webinar I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks. So I'm very excited to hear what she has to say, Alex. So thank you for that as well. No, you're surrounded by some great female leaders and your board as well. Our medical device group is run by Ashley McAvoy, a woman, again, one of the largest medical device companies in the world. Jennifer Talbert runs our pharmaceutical business, largest pharmaceutical business in the United States, one of the top in the world. And if you look at our board, I couldn't be more proud. People like Dr. Jennifer Doudna, of course, a Nobel Prize laureate. People like Mary Beckerly, who runs the Huntsman Oncology Institute. Anne Mulcahy, former CEO of Xerox, who's our lead director at Johnson & Johnson. We just added Nadia Graham-West, who we're really excited to have her join. She was the first 3-star African-American woman general and Surgeon General of the Army. So just a wonderful addition to our board of directors, in addition to Marilyn Hughes and, of course, the former CEO of Lockheed.
What a fantastic lineup. No wonder you are so successful and you had this one-dose vaccine victory, Alex. This is terrific with all those women. So, you're ahead of the game. A lot of companies are not there yet, particularly with regard to gender diversity. You've been named one of the 100 most inspiring leaders by Pharma Voice. You're a leader for DEI as a member of the Business Council and the Business Roundtable. What are you asking of your CEO colleagues at these forums and what you want to see them doing in this regard with diversity overall and gender diversity as well?
Well, look, we know that if we want to be at our best as leaders, if we want to be our best as companies, we've got to represent the stakeholders that we are engaging with each and every day. And we can only do that if we bring out the best in our employees, if we create an environment where everyone can be successful regardless of your background. And so having this strong commitment, having this fundamental core belief that diversity ultimately is in the best interest of not only society and our country, but also in business and helping all of us be better as a company. It really starts with that core belief. Now, I think it also takes a commitment in terms of ensuring that we've got the kind of policies and processes and priorities and investment inside our organizations to bring that to life. Because as all of us know, we can have wonderful aspirations, but if we're not putting the right resources behind it, if we don't hold people accountable and responsible, it just won't happen. It'll become, just another checklist, so to speak. And so we're encouraging, other people to say, let's talk about how we bring that to life. Sharing best practices. We've spent a lot of time at organizations like the Business Roundtable, not trying to reinvent the wheel, but trying to ensure that companies are aware of some of the great programs and initiatives that are already in place where, we can replicate and hopefully amplify so that ultimately we multiply, the effort. And last but not least, I think it's about being transparent about where we are on this journey. Specifically in some of the work that I've done at the Business Roundtable, chairing the governance committee where we have responsibility for diversity and inclusion. The recent decision where asking companies to provide very specific metrics regarding the composition of their workforce, of the managerial ranks, the ranks, for example, of senior leadership, as well as at the board level. I think when public companies are transparent with that information, it's a source of motivation to want to do better and to demonstrate, their commitment. And so I think these are all areas that we're really trying to focus on to help companies not only embrace this, but to demonstrate the kind of positive change I think that we're all striving for.
So let's turn a little bit to the pandemic. Okay, your reputation is that of being a hands-on leader, and you've said the best way to solve global public health issues is to take an active and aggressive approach. You traveled extensively, you've personally been out there to promote awareness, met with global leaders, and you speak with world organizations to create partnerships to improve the health of the world's population. So what are the things and lessons learned from this pandemic that could potentially protect us from another health crisis, and what type of partnerships do we need to have?
Well, look, I think there'll be volumes of books and journals and online pieces written about this pandemic. And for me, it starts with a few really essential learnings. I think first is the importance of global public health programs. I think for far too long, we have had a maniacal focus on efficiency and effectiveness when it comes to our healthcare systems. And those items are certainly important to make sure that, we're getting the biggest bang for the buck, so to speak, and that best practices are applied. But I think what this pandemic has demonstrated, we need an even more ardent focus on things like sustainability, like durability, resilience, over time. In certain areas, we're going to need to have some redundancy so that we can handle surges, for example, in ICUs and CCUs, so that we have additional equipment for PPE on hand, that we have the capacity and the infrastructure to rapidly develop multiple vaccines. And that's going to require some investment. So I think it'll be critical for healthcare systems, politicians, government officials, and industry to work together to come up with a much more robust approach for global public health going forward.
Is that happening?
I think it is. I think those discussions are taking place as we speak. Look, we realize that if we don't make those investments, that I realize making investments for prevention can always be challenging. But look at the cost in terms of trillions of dollars, millions of human lives, let alone on economies, on society that we have suffered through with this pandemic. And we've all got to ask ourselves seriously, what else must we be doing to ensure that we do a better job? Because unfortunately, Janice, given the global world we live in, we're likely going to experience something similar in the future if we don't take these kind of prudent steps.
That seems to be what we hear, and that's terrifying. And yet it's amazing how so many companies did pivot virtually overnight and employees went virtual overnight. How did this impact J&J in terms of your pipeline, your R&D, when people weren't sitting side by side?
Well, you're right, Janice. If you would have asked me 13 months ago, gosh, could we continue to service and support customers? Could we continue to discover and develop medicines and devices and new consumer approaches? Could we continue to close our books at the end of each quarter in a fast, accurate, compliant manner? And could we do all that in a virtual, connected, agile way? I think that would have been a long shot. But to see how our organization quickly pivoted and adapted so many different new technologies, just as we are even on this podcast, and how we've evolved has really been remarkable. And we tried to provide them with the right tools. It does require us to work different. And look, I remain somewhat concerned longer term in that to be able to reinforce and to build the kind of value systems and culture in a company does require some proximity with other employees and being together and having that serendipitous run-in with them in the cafeteria or someplace else that you just don't quite get on Zoom or a more vicarious experience. And so longer term, I think getting together in a new way, I'm not an advocate of going back to the way that we were, but I do think it will likely be some hybrid of the way we're working today in a very virtual world and in a world where we do occasionally, we spend time together. We can still collaborate, partner, and spend important time together so that we can continue to innovate. But, by and large, we have not shown much of an impact at all in our research and development programs thus far. And we've been able to keep, by far the overwhelming majority of our programs on track. But I do think that's something that we're going to have to watch closely going forward as the half-life of some of those relationships and that time together, potentially fades. We've got to make sure that we do everything we can to make it seamless and to keep people working together.
Well, as an eternal optimist, I always look at companies such as yours as being able to provide us with those therapies that are going to get us back into not having to have social distancing. So I'm optimistic that by 2022, more of us will be getting together. And as you said, you're working together with governments and other leaders on making sure that we are looking around those corners as to what might be, right?
Absolutely.
In that regard, what new ideas do you see coming out of Johnson & Johnson over the next year or two?
One of the best parts of my job is just the sheer array and diversity of innovation, of new technologies across, whether it's the biopharmaceutical, the medical device, or the consumer platforms. I'm certainly excited about some of these new scientific approaches, be it mRNA, be it DNA, cell-based therapeutic approaches, in areas such as oncology and cancer, or even to the point where in the future, can we apply some of the same vaccine technology to prevent cancer or Alzheimer's disease from occurring in the first place? And so I think all those platforms are certainly exciting. I think the uptake of technology in the hospital is going to accelerate in a very rapid way. And so whether it's applying robotics, digital techniques, connectivity, artificial intelligence, sensing to the operating room of the future, never to replace the surgeon, but to dramatically improve not only the inputs that they have to help design a surgery, but the actual surgery itself, and certainly in the outcomes related post-surgery, I think are all very exciting areas. And last but not least, on the consumer side, I think all of us have become a lot smarter consumers of health care over the past 13 months. And I think going forward, whether it's the information that we find out online, our desire to get more involved in some of those day-to-day healthcare decisions about how do we bring diagnostic kits and other treatments into the house with our families that we may not have considered before. All those are exciting areas of opportunity for a company like Johnson & Johnson.
Sounds like the next decade, we're going to be looking at a whole new delivery and diagnostic system to help save those lives. So what would be your parting words to our audience about the state of where we are and where we're going?
There's one thing that we've learned through this pandemic is the importance of our health to everyone. And that is to everyone as a person, as a leader, as an individual, as a family member, the importance of health to our societies, to our countries, and certainly to the globe. And it's particularly important that we do whatever we can to take care of ourselves. Because if we don't have health and wellness, it's so difficult to be our best. And we also know, even in this case, that the healthier that we can be, the more resilient likely we're going to be when faced with these kind of circumstances. So whatever job, whatever stage in life you're at, young, old, in between, I just encourage everyone, invest some time in your own personal health and wellness. And that's not only running a marathon, but it's finding a way to stay active, to stay engaged. It's finding ways to ensure we're getting the rest that we need, finding ways to eat right, and incorporate those daily habits and daily rituals that ultimately help us be healthier. And that's good not only for each of us as individuals, but for all of us as families and for all of us as communities of the world. So please take care of yourselves, and good health and wellness to everyone.
Really, to be in charge of your own health destiny is really important in taking charge. And that's what you're saying to all of us. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the countless hours of dedication that you and your Johnson & Johnson colleagues are giving to get the world back on track. On behalf of everyone, thank you for the vaccine and other therapies that will save people's lives. And my personal appreciation to you for being on our podcast today, Johnson & Johnson, a one-dose vaccine victory. Alex Gorsky, thank you so very much.
Well, thank you very much. And let me just end by saying none of this would be possible without the incredible hard work and commitment and dedication of our almost 115,000 employees around the world. For them, I just could not be more proud. Thank you so much, Janice.
And you're a great leader of them. So thank you, Alex. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to another game-changing conversation on Leadership Reimagined, released on the third Thursday of each month. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our website at elligroup.com. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you again to Alex Gorsky, CEO and Chairman of Johnson & Johnson.